repetition. It may sound like a boring word, but it's not. Once you know what it can do for you, you'll start to love it. Learning to love repetition is a shortcut to getting good at language. I'm going to talk about why I love repetition, which is also why you should love repetition, and I'll discuss some language learning theory and memory theory. All right, let's get to it. Why I love repetition. Repetition is one of the major keys to successful language learning, or actually even in learning in general. Like, think of anyone that does anything successfully or well, and you'll find out that person has done a lot of repetition. Athletes spend a lot of time doing repetitive practice. And it's not just athletes either. Guitar players practice their scales and their licks over and over. Piano players, singers, fighters, etc. It's been said that Shaolin monks have a saying, "I'm not scared of the 1,000 kicks you've practiced once. I am scared of the one kick you've practiced 1,000 times." The repetition you want to do in language learning, especially early on, is to repeat sentences after native speakers. And do that over and over and over.
What?
Why? There are tons of reasons, but here are a few. Number one, language learning is essentially building up an internal mental database of the language you're learning. The more you repeat correct sentences after a native speaker, the stronger your internal database will be, the more accurate it will be. Someone who speaks Mandarin like a native once told me that every time they make a mistake in a conversation, whether it be grammar, word usage, pronunciation, tones, whatever, they would correct their error and say it correctly 20 times in a row. What are they doing? They're making sure that their internal database has more correct repetitions than incorrect ones. When you hear a foreigner speak your language,
Du sucre?
Non.
and they say something that isn't quite
You
right,
speak very good French?
Gracias.
maybe it's accent or make a grammar mistake, you just know that it's not correct because what they said feels wrong. Well, why does it feel wrong? Because it does not fit the range of sound patterns that you're used to. What does this tell us? Repeating correct sentences develops our intuition for Mandarin, just like we did in our own language. Though as children, we did this by interacting with our parents and other people. As adults, we can get the same effect much more quickly by engaging in concentrated repetition. Point number two, grammar is not that stuff that you see in language textbooks. Real grammar in the mind of a native speaker is sound pattern. Even if you've never heard of a subject or a verb in your whole life, if someone mixed up the normal order of a subject and verb like this, talked John to Fred, you'd immediately know it was wrong. Why? Because it doesn't fit the sound patterns that you're used to hearing. If you repeat sentences after native speakers, you'll develop the same intuition or something close to it, depending on how much repetition drills you do. So if you want to get good at a language and do it in a way that you get it right the first time, you need to invest in repeating sentences after native speakers. Point number three, it also makes learning mentally easier. It's much easier to listen to a correct sentence and repeat it, which doesn't require understanding any of the grammar involved, than it is to memorize a set of grammar rules and words and then use those to put together correct sentences with correct pronunciation. That's basically not going to happen. If you memorize several sentences that embody a given grammar point and use those sentences by swapping out words, you can create a lot of sentences that you know to be correct. And this works especially well for Mandarin. Point number four, and this is really important. Memories created via reading and writing are fundamentally different from memories created by listening and repeating. This is especially true when acquiring the core of a language. When you get to an advanced stage, i.e. you've mastered the core of the language, including phonology, grammar, vocabulary, learning by reading and writing is okay. But do an experiment. Listen to and repeat one sentence, just listening to the audio, for 60 seconds. Then spend 60 seconds looking at another sentence written on paper. Then compare how well you say each sentence. If you haven't mastered Mandarin's sound system, then learning by reading and writing will get you written memories. Listening and repeating will get you audio memories. It's far easier to turn audio memories into correct speech than written memories. Once you've mastered the sound system, meaning all the consonants, tones, vowels, sentence intonation, etc., then it would be easier to use written memories. Point 5. The most important aspects of pronunciation, like rhythm, sentence intonation, etc., are normally left out of writing entirely. So if you're focused on reading and writing, you're going to miss the most important aspects of pronunciation. When you miss those aspects, chances are you'll fill in what you're missing with your native language. When you learn via reading and writing, you're not aiming at the target. You need that native speaker's speech as a model. If you memorize native speaker speech, you'll hear it in your head when you're trying to talk. Even if you're not saying it correctly today, you'll eventually notice you're saying it wrong. That is not true if you're thinking of pinyin spelling in your head. I have this Taiwanese friend, and her English is rather peculiar. Why is it peculiar? Well, if you're not listening to what she's saying at all, like she's just sitting at the table next to you talking to somebody, you would think she's a native English speaker. But if you listen, at all, like even just to a little bit of what she's saying, it's completely not native speaker English. Like, so what's going on? Her sentence intonation is really good. In fact, it's native-like. But her pronunciation of individual words is very much not native-like. So what this tells you is, obviously you still have to learn your vowels and your consonants, but the sounds that occur between words are extremely important for you to sound natural when you're speaking the language you're learning, in this case, Mandarin. Learning in the way this course advocates, it will expose you to and you will pick up on these very important aspects of pronunciation. Point number 6. Focusing on repeated native speaker speech causes you to focus on pronunciation. Focusing on pronunciation also gets you good grammar and word usage. How's that? Because when you're focusing on the sounds coming out of someone's mouth, you'll also notice the grammar and word usage, which is sound pattern. One common mistake beginning learners make is to focus solely on the meaning. People get false comfort from recognizing a sound that they can turn into pinyin. Sound is more scary because it vanishes so quickly. But if you want to understand what people are saying to you, you need to master the sounds, not how to write the sounds. The most effective order is to first master the sound, then later learn how to write that sound. Okay, so in this video, we learned that there are many benefits to listening to and repeating native speaker speech, which of course is doing our repetition drills. For one, it helps us build up our internal database of correct sentences. And since real grammar is sound pattern, it helps us to develop an intuition for correct grammar. It also makes learning mentally easier. Additionally, it takes advantage of the fact that audio memories are different from written memories. And audio memories are easier to use when speaking. Listening to and repeating native speaker speech also gives you direct access to the most important aspects of pronunciation that are ignored in writing, namely sentence cadence, intonation, and tones. And lastly, it also improves your intuition for grammar. If you want to learn how to use repetition to fix your tones, sign up for our free tone training seminar. There is a link in the description.